People have been saying that the latest boss events within Escape from Tarkov, obviously we've had the updates where essentially now every week we have a new boss at a 100% spawn rate so that they always spawn in the raids. At the moment it's Sturman, but people have been saying that this is a bad thing for the game. And I don't know what they're on, to be honest with you. And whether you play PVE or PvP, I think that this update definitely adds something. And I want to talk about some of the things in which BSG could maybe do better with this to make it even better as a update, and kind of talk through maybe some of the things that people have been saying why it is so bad for Escape from Tarkov, and generally just not the best. So probably the biggest one is that bosses are just too hard, and that people can't take out bosses, it's too difficult, and that they should definitely remove the bosses from 100% because they want to do specific tasks, etc., and make it easier on themselves to be able to do that. And whilst I think that yes, okay, it can be difficult when you first start out playing, bosses can be learned like anything in Escape from Tarkov, and I think it all comes down to the friction in which these events actually add to the game. And at the end of the day, I think friction in games like this is probably one of the biggest reasons why Escape from Tarkov has been around compared to some of the other extraction shooters that we have available on the market. You know, you can go and play Grey Zone Warfare, you can go and play Delta Force's extraction mode, you can play all kinds of different things should you want to do that. And I think that BSG have done a very good job of creating enough friction where it isn't too easy for players to just jump on and learn everything within like a week. You cannot learn everything within a week of Escape from Tarkov. And so these boss events kind of give you the feeling that you are going to be on the back foot if you were learning bosses, if you've never done them before. And it kind of not necessarily pushes you to fight the bosses because you can play all of the different maps. It's not like they are 100% on every single map, albeit we'll get onto the topic of that later on in this video. Is that the thing with it is that I feel like we miss a lot of the core fundamentals when it comes to adding in bosses as a 100% spawn rate, is that it does add something to the game. You know, you can target farm the bosses to be able to get the rewards. It gives you that option, and especially if you play PvE, for example, it's very difficult to get kills on some of the bosses in those raids when you first, you know, start playing, because you are having to compete with other players who maybe have had, you know, the time advantage over you where the 100% bosses weren't a thing, but they've, you know, seen the bosses way more. And so it gives you that opportunity to get into some fights with those bosses. And it also gives you the option of not forcing you to do any specific one thing, which I think is very, very important when it comes to Tarkov, is that you are not forced to do anything, but more so you are like given the option of kind of doing it how you want to do it. And yeah, I think that lots of people probably find that the bosses are too difficult, they're too hard, there isn't enough kind of teaching within the game. But I think actually when it comes down to it, that is what makes you play the game. It's what makes people want to actually do things in the game. I think that if you make things too easy, people get bored, people leave the game. You see it with a lot of these extraction shooters and kind of mind-numbingly boring shooters and stuff like that, whereby, you know, they just don't have the time that a lot of the other games do. So things that are more successful in the long term, I think, have more friction, and therefore, you know, they're more likely to succeed over other games. And so that's kind of my take on it being too easy, is that it gives you that option to do things that maybe a lot of other games make it too easy. They kind of spoon feed you. It becomes very boring. You understand everything. There's no nuance to anything. It's all just, here you go, here's exactly how to do things. And I think Tarkov gets that quite right with regards to allowing you as the player to leave it up to your own interpretation. What is the best? What is the best? You know, we can talk about even just the weapon systems within the game itself. And, you know, you look at various different things with the weapons, is like, which is the best weapon? Well, there isn't a clear-cut answer to that. There are some more meta weapons in the game for, you know, PvP. But at the same time, those meta weapons may not actually be good on certain maps. And so it opens it up for you to interpret what you think is going to be the best thing for the games that you're playing. So I think that that is something I wanted to talk about with regards to this event. A lot of people, I say a lot of people, there's not too many people that are complaining. Most people, from what I can see, enjoy the whole boss event and having them spawn 100%. It allows you to complete some of the more annoying tasks that genuinely can be really annoying. And take you a long time just simply by running raids, and sometimes they're not there, and then you're having to waste time going back and forth between raids, etc. I think that this allows you to, you know, farm those things during a small period of time. I mean, it is only a week. Most people are relatively casual. They don't have that Twitch streamer time where, you know, they're playing 8 hours a day. Most people do not have that ability to do that. And so I think that, you know, given the fact that they've kind of made this into a event whereby, you know, common people can get a much better chance at actually doing things in the game, I think that that is overall a good thing for people. And so I don't think anyone can really complain about it. I don't see it as being a proper problem. There we go. That was Sturman apparently. We haven't seen Partisan, so he may be sneaking up on me. I'm playing live, by the way. But at the same time, we should also talk about the fact that the event is good, but there are some things that I think could be improved with regards to the game, or this specific thing with regards to the bosses. And I think that comes down to, is it leading up to something? Is there going to be a bigger event? Is there something that we can all kind of take from it? Are we going to be moving forward to do other things, or is it simply that these are just going to be a common thing in the game? Should it be that these are always going to be a thing within the game, or should, you know, it be a limited time event? Should it be more limited to allow players to play different maps? Maybe people get bored of the fact that the bosses are 100% all of the time. I don't know, but from my standpoint, I think that because you have so many other maps, so many different things that you can do, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world that they do kind of make you play, you know, the different maps or whatever in a row, or however you would like to call it, you know, having to play different maps maybe you don't necessarily want to do. Sherman didn't have anything decent on him, unfortunately, no key card. So for me, what would I actually change about this event? How would I change it? How would I make it better? How would I try and please more people? I think that if you lead it up to something like, for example, the 100% boss spawn rate of all bosses on a specific map, we've had that before. I think that gives you like a kind of sense of like, okay, I can learn the bosses individually as this event is going on, or this kind of series of 100% bosses is going, and then it leads up to that big event every so often where all of the bosses spawn on one specific map. Now, it's not always the same map. For example, it can be on the Health Resort. We've had it on, what's it called? Reserve as well. So, you know, it all kind of comes down to personal preference as to whether you actually like the whole boss event itself. Like, do you enjoy the fact that the boss event actually happens, that there is 100% bosses? I don't know, maybe you absolutely despise it, it's the worst thing in the world. But for me, as someone who plays Tarkov quite a bit and has the time to be able to do that, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I think it actually adds value to the game itself, and I think that that is definitely something to be said. So I think when people are complaining about these things, often these are players that maybe don't understand that if you learn the bosses, it becomes far easier. Like the bosses themselves, once you learn and get over the fear of them, they're actually really fun to run. And, you know, even when you are so-called good at the game, or what have you, you can still run into situations where maybe you get taken out or what have you. And so it can create like some fun, some excitement that maybe you wouldn't get from some of the other things in the game. And I think it adds another avenue, especially in the late game, like especially late wipe, for example. You know, there's not a whole lot to do and you just want to simply relax and enjoy Tarkov, have something new to do, something that you can work towards. I think that it gives you that opportunity, especially if you're doing those big tasks as well. For example, if you're wanting to take out Killer, for example, it gives you that opportunity to do that. And so I think that that is important as well. That you don't just make things insanely difficult for everyone. It opens the floor to more casual players where they can complete things like taking out Killer 100 times or taking out Sturman 20 times, because most people will not have the time for the most part to be able to complete these tasks. And whilst I don't think you should make it super easy for people to be able to like do it within 30 seconds, you should also not make it way too difficult that it becomes like a negative, like they feel like they have to grind out all of these things, that it's going to be a pain, that it's going to take you way too long and you're never going to be able to do it. And then, you know, you leave the game, you don't play again. I think that is also something that you kind of have to think about when designing a game, and why a lot of extraction shooters don't find that good balance of it being tough and enough friction, but also making it, you know, way too easy or way too hard. So I think this boss event in particular, I've really enjoyed it. I enjoy doing this whole boss event. I think it gives it something new to actually work towards. And whilst, you know, sometimes it is difficult, especially when you first start out, that is what fuels you to want to get better, to play the game, to learn the game more. And I think a lot of the people who are complaining about these sorts of things, maybe they just can't be asked to actually learn the game, or they want it to be spoon-fed to them like a lot of other games. But actually they'll find that there's more enjoyment when you do actually do it yourself, when you do learn yourself. I think that that is definitely something that a lot of people miss within this game, and don't understand that it's actually pretty decent to do. So that's kind of my brain farting. I kind of wanted to talk about this whole event, and having seen some people really seriously complaining about the fact that we're getting, you know, at least some new content, I think I just wanted to give my opinion. Now, of course, it is only my opinion. I am not any better than anyone else who plays the game. I'm not trying to say, you know, I know best or anything like that, but it's more so talking about the fact that, you know, opening up the discussion to the community and understanding what the general consensus is, because I'm sure that the majority of players find that this is actually a good addition to the game. But yeah, some people are saying it's absolutely the worst thing that BSG have ever implemented into the game, and it's disgusting, and it has ruined the game for me. That I just can't really understand, and yeah, I'm sure some people will be saying it's a skill issue. But I don't know. I think that that is what kind of makes Tarkov, and making it more difficult and adding variety is always something you want, especially towards the end, when end game content becomes, you know, the primary focus of players, especially if you've been playing PVE since the beginning. And even if you're starting out as a new player, it can give you an opportunity to get to grips with some of the bosses that you will have to fight to be able to complete some of the tasks, and overall make the experience, and also your own experience, like how well you develop as a player, much better, and so you can use that in the future. So that's kind of my take on the whole new boss event. Wanted to talk about it. Obviously, that I've done a guide for Sturman and Glukar already, so for those two bosses, I'm assuming that this will just keep on cycling through the bosses, unless BSG do actually implement like an end game kind of all bosses are spawning on one map at the end, and then that'll be kind of something that will be very interesting. That was like my funnest event out of all of the events on Escape from Tarkov, is when you have all of the bosses, because it is so much more difficult to survive whilst also taking out all of the bosses at the same time. So yeah, it gives you a challenge, and the more challenges you have, the more difficult you make things, the more people want to grind to be able to complete it, as long as you don't make it ridiculous, you know, where you're just having to repeatedly do things over and over and over and over again that are like mundane tasks. You see that with a lot of games in the industry, is that, hey, we'll make a challenge that is just play 1,000 raids, essentially. Like, you know, take out 10,000 scavs, for example. Like, it's going to happen. It's just that you've got to play a ton of games rather than like making it that you can play a, you know, a decent amount of games. If you focus up and you're really good and you learn the game, you can do it much quicker. If you're, you know, slightly newer to the game, it takes a little bit longer, but it feels like you're progressing towards that stage where you become more comfortable with the content that you're trying to achieve, rather than just playing X amount of raids and it being very boring. A lot of companies, a lot of games do that, where they make these achievements, but they're essentially just play walls, where you just have to like spend 1,000 hours literally just playing the game normally, and you're not focusing on anything. So I do like that about Tarkov. I think it does it really well. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you understood my take on this whole thing. I understand it's a relatively long video, but I thought it'd be worth kind of showcasing it off to you guys and kind of talking about it, as I'm sure lots of you have your own opinions, and I'm be interested to see what those are in the comment section down below. But thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.